Hey, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook Live. Every week I say it, and every week it's even more true. Mike hates that this is on Facebook.
I do.
So I think one of the most important things to start with is Mike's new office, where all of his diplomas are behind him. Mike, you're very impressive.
Really? They have nothing to do with what I do, right? This says I have a master's in oceanography. That's not really helping me. I have
You
forgotten more about how the planet works than most people are ever going to know. Let's just say that.
Yeah, when Mike talks about, IT security being underwater, he knows what he's talking about.
That's right. I've been to
There
the
you
bottom,
go.
baby.
There you
That's
go.
right.
All right. Tomorrow, security awareness training.
Yep.
Come, send your employees, send your friends, send your families. There are some stories that I think I'm going to be able to tell tomorrow about some things that we've helped customers with this week. But I got to tell everybody, business email compromise is way up.
Yeah.
The fake sending of invoices and losing money that way, big, 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 big problem. Best way to tackle it, security awareness training. Send folks tomorrow, really important. Also, we did what I think is our best webinar ever on NIST CSF 2.0. It's on our YouTube channel. Please take a look at it. I just got another email from somebody today in Georgia who was like, wow, that was a great webinar. Thank you so much for the
Cool.
information. And no, I don't know when the new NIST CSF is coming out. They don't tell me. We also did a panel this week on changes to healthcare cybersecurity. That's also on the YouTube channel. People loved it, but not as much as NIST CSF 2.0 webinar, but still good, still very good. Put a lot of effort into it. Um, and um, and so those are the really important things to tell you, Mike. So the other thing is, as the leaders of the company, we have to take annual training, and it's
Oh,
diversity
yeah.
training, sexual harassment. Have you done it yet, Mike?
I have not. I
So
better get after it. Yeah.
I was doing it this morning. Other than being a good thing to do and important to do every year and a good reminder, there's a video of somebody walking away from a computer without locking it.
Later used to harass, right? I
I
guess.
don't know. I don't
I'm
know,
not
but
sure what the
but
linkage
I
is
but
there.
I thought to myself, that's not one of the answers on the multiple choice thing.
Mhm.
All right, some big news this week. Klopp ransomware gang. Uh,
Mhm.
what's going on, Mike?
So, yet another file transfer application went vulnerable, didn't get patched, and this Clop ransomware gang, and it's probably others too, are exploiting this all over the world.
Hmm.
Just anybody who has this exposure has already probably been compromised, and the ones they called out in particular are. Because it was a British article, it was from the UK, BBC, British Airways, Boots Pharmacy, which is their equivalent of Walgreens. In fact, I think
Hmm.
it's the same corporation. And what they're doing is they're threatening them, we're going to release all the records unless you pay us. So it's the combination of ransomware and records theft. And they got some pretty big organizations there, but, they're talking about this is mass exploitation, right? Again,
Yeah.
they automate all this stuff, and organizations large and small are getting hit, and they're hitting banks, government agencies, all kinds of targets that they can find. It's really, it's targeting of opportunity because you have that exposure, not because you're somebody they actually have targeted to go after.
Yeah.
So, buckle up. This is going to turn into another big one, and there's going to be a whole lot of money extorted.
Yep. 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 Hey, and one thing that's impacted people around everyone I know, all of the problems with Outlook this week.
Yeah,
There's
Outlook and
so
Office 365 kind of
so
puked this week.
And then somebody said, a gang. Somebody said
I
that
don't know
they
if
did it.
yeah,
Is it true?
I don't
What's the
know. I don't know. It's easy. It's too easy for somebody. When there's a problem with a
right?
global application like that, it's too easy for somebody to raise their hand and say, "We did that." Right. And this goes way back to, script kiddie days when the motivation for, compromising computers was glory. And yeah, I don't know that that's actually true. Microsoft is going to have to say something about that for me to think that's true. But that's the story. Outlook is being hit by outages as hacktivists are claiming DDoS attacks.
Yeah, I mean, look, in covering news, there were all sorts of things that happened, internationally where somebody, said, "Oh, I take credit for that,"
Yeah,
and it was rarely true. All right, healthcare. One of the things that we talked about in the webinar this week, and I think it's important to talk about here again, is the NIST 866 revision 2
yeah.
evolving. What do folks need to know, Mike?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of things we can hit today that were actually reflected in both of the webinars that you talked about. But this 800-66R2 is talking about incident response guidelines as they relate to HIPAA. If you're a covered entity under HIPAA, right? So hospitals and
Hmm.
clinics and things like
Hmm.
that, right? And what they're talking about is you need to ensure that you have response capabilities that are documented and practiced for the unauthorized disclosure of EPHI wherever it is. And so that includes business associates. And that's
Hmm.
really what they're trying to get across here, right? There's this distribution of these records, and there's all these service providers that are involved in helping manage all of this. And when they get popped, you need a response plan there, because go all the way back to the Blackbaud thing, where Blackbaud was a provider of essentially financial services for philanthropies, nonprofits, and a lot of hospitals, right? So they got popped for all the records, and then all of those individual hospitals had to file data breach reports. And so then it was followed by class action suits, because everybody's trying to make everybody whole here. Well, I think that's the impetus for this kind of guidance, is if you have a service provider, now you have to take responsibility for response if that service provider is compromised and records are stolen. What this means is hospitals just have to invest more money they don't have to make things like this happen.
Yeah, and I think important to zoom out here and say, look, there are two really terrible outcomes when healthcare gets hit by cyber attacks. Outcome number one is something bad happens to a patient. Those
Right.
patient outcomes, somebody dies, like has happened a couple of times, right? I mean, that is the worst outcome. The second worst outcome is it shuts down the facility.
Yep.
Why? Well, people don't have access to healthcare, employees can't work. Like, I mean, it's a really awful thing. And that seems to have happened in Oklahoma this week.
It did. And to your point, when there's a ransomware event and a hospital network gets flattened, patients are redirected, things like this. And it's not, you're right, there can be immediate deaths there, but it's the impact on the region, and it's the longer tail of a lot of things, right? So if somebody couldn't get their cancer medication or a heart treatment or something like that, it maybe shortened their life. And there was some articles this week actually talking about this, about how we're not really tracking this very well, but there seems to be signal there that we can measure about, again, the long tail of, you had your therapy disrupted by this, right? You didn't
Sure.
die right
Hmm.
away, but you probably died sooner, right? So yes, there's an Oklahoma clinic, and they're claiming a cyber attack caused them to shut down, right? And it's the Institute of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. So they're furloughing employees. Everybody has to go somewhere else now. And I think with what we've seen with the targeting going down market to smaller clinics and physician associations, stuff like that, more of that's going to happen. And those are the ones that cannot survive that financially. So there's probably going to be more of this coming.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing, I guess, non-healthcare, but going back to CSF 2.0, is
Uh-huh.
the SEC now getting very serious about governance, and saying, there are all these new rules around what companies have to report about cybersecurity.
And we talked a lot about this, right? You when you think about cybersecurity regulations coming at you, you think, are they going to be prescriptive controls? And they're going to be technical, and train your users and have an incident response plan that
Right.
covers your
Right.
third parties and things like this. No, what they're requiring publicly listed companies to disclose their cybersecurity governance capabilities, including the board's oversight of that type of risk. So now in your quarterly filings, you're going to have to talk about what you discussed in a board meeting having to do with cyber risk, whether or not you accepted risks you've identified formally, or you have some kind of mitigation plan, or you're deciding you're going to transfer. But all that stuff has to be documented now. And it's getting more serious. And this is why in the NIST CSF 2.0, they pulled governance out of the identify bucket and made it, its own focus area. That's why this is really important. So there's, we can expect more of this. We can expect more of being forced to have a representation of cybersecurity at the corporate management executive level.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Hey, Mike, there's a story that I saw this week that I want your take on.
Huh.
Um, about a clickless iOS, so Apple exploit,
Oh yeah.
and it hit folks at Kaspersky.
Actually, more
Um,
than that, but
so so
Kaspersky
so
detected it.
what is this? I
Yes.
mean, this. I mean, I haven't seen something like this. This seems like a big deal, and I haven't seen so much about it.
Yeah, well, okay, this story is still kind of bubbly. So the who done it is kind of pointed at us. So it's clickless malware that takes over phones and turns them into what Kaspersky described as a fully featured APT platform. And it was one of the, you send an iMessage text and you don't have to do anything, and it executes itself. And so a whole bunch of Kaspersky employees found this on their phones, and now they found it's broader than that. And so it looks like that's what we did. But why target Kaspersky? There's been a lot of insinuation that they work for the Russian government and that their antivirus agent is actually, a backdoor listening for the Russians, which I never really thought was true. But this is really interesting. So I don't know yet,
But
and
but
I think
but
the story has to develop more.
Well, but I also think this idea. So like everybody knows that I can get a virus on my computer. I can get this. I can get that. People in general, right or wrong, think that their phones are safe.
Wrong.
And I know, but especially people with Apple phones think that their phones are safe.
We
And I
are a
mean
little
this,
snooty. It's true.
and and this seems like a real change in that. This seems like, oh, this is hundreds of people who have this malware on their phone, if it's true, right?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the beauty in targeting a phone like this, you know, your phone has more computing power than a desktop computer did, even 10 years ago, I guess. Yeah, but the thing is, that computer you keep with you all the time, and it is always connected to the internet. So that makes it a much better target for things like espionage. And if you're a bad government and you want to, track dissidents and take over their phones and find out what they're talking about, it's the phone is the way to do it. The computer, yeah, computer's more for stealing money.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Um, uh, so another story that I saw this week, and because you and I talk about this all the time, is I mean, it sounds like a conspiracy theory that oh, the people who are taking your money is North Korea, but it's true,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
And proven this week. Tell people that story, man.
So proved, I mean, they study these things, and the thing you're talking about is a study came out, and they said about 50% of North Korea's foreign currency earnings come from cyber theft.
That's crazy.
That is crazy if you consider the GDP of that country, to be reasonably small, and it's only 50% of their foreign currency earnings, which are probably very diminished right now. The absolute value of that number is probably not huge, but they continue to be involved in cryptocurrency theft, and they're even using ransomware now and extorting. Probably trying to look like Russians. I don't know, but
Okay, okay,
it's to make money. It's for
look,
sure to make money.
look. Of course, like the GDP of North Korea is nothing like the GDP of the U.S. or of South Korea, but it's still $20 billion. I mean, that's a lot. It's B with a billion, right?
Well, right, but how much of that is foreign currency earnings, right? We're
Yeah,
talking about 50% of foreign currency earnings, and we don't know what those numbers are, but that 50% is a striking number.
it's a big
And
number.
and we keep talking about what we read is that a lot of this goes to fund weapons programs.
Right.
So, your sloppy security could end up with a nuke on your head.
I am infuriated by this. All right, Mike, threats and vulns.
Okay, what's going on? There's a Mage card. Remember a Mage card? It's kind of
Yeah,
come
yeah,
and gone, right?
yeah.
Now the new tactic is they hijack legit sites to host scripts that steal credit cards and act as command and control. So, anybody that's taken credit cards online, you probably need to really be watching things.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Malware is increasingly starting to take advantage of Chat GPT for attacks,
Mm-hmm.
but not in the
Mm-hmm.
way you would think. Not, hey, create a piece of malware for me. It's more like domain squatting for sites that look like Chat GPT.
Yep.
Right,
You
so
mean
that
like
people
you
can.
mean like chatgpt.com? How did they come up with chatgpt and not buy
I don't know.
chatgpt.com?
I don't
Whatever.
know.
Go ahead.
I don't know. Some of these startups are run by people. I can't say that. Let's see. Oh, this one's fun. Minecraft mods. Dozens of Minecraft mods are infected with some kind of malware. It's called Fracturizer. I don't know what it does. But so now, all your kids that are modding Minecraft are bringing malware into the home. A lot of people
Yay.
use something called free VPN,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a
Yeah.
company's product, right? They leaked 360 million user records. And what we're finding out is they had a no logging policy, which was patently not true.
So are you saying free VPN is not free?
No, it is not free. And speaking of North Koreans, again, there's this atomic wallet, 35 million in cryptocurrency stolen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are definitely the Lazarus group, right? North Korean military
Mm-hmm.
hacker. That's
Mm-hmm.
who did this. That's what they're saying, right? I'm believing what I read in the media here, but if you have a cryptocurrency wallet and you are a cryptocurrency user, North Koreans are coming after you. So heads up. Um, Remember that Spin OK malware we talked about that was in Android apps, and it was a component, and we're finding that it's continuing to be found as having been implemented in Android apps, and there's another 30 million installs.
Yeah.
Oh God. And what else? Patch Chrome.
I is being Mike is being CISO just being the guy who sends an email every week that says please patch Chrome.
Yeah,
Okay, just
yeah.
checking.
That, and you have to worry about things like budget,
Oh, I didn't know there was another part of the
audits.
job. I thought it was just
Yeah,
telling people to patch Chrome
audits is kind of a big deal. It's kind of
and
important.
patch Chrome and lock your laptop when you walk away from it. All right, especially if you're on video. So at the end of all of these, we have a kicker, something where Mike tries to make you smile or at least think or something memorable. What do you got, Mike?
So I thought this one was funny. Back when the Iraq War was kind of morphing into the Islamic State militants,
Yeah,
remember? And Australia was one of our allies, and
still
what
is.
still is. Sorry, uh, they were trying to figure out ways to disrupt Islamic State militants in their communications and things like that. And what they were able to do was put an app on their phones, right? Get them to bite and got
Yeah.
an app on their phones. And what it would do is every time they tried to connect to the internet to communicate with one another, it would rickroll them. It would rickroll them. And the quote from the Australian guy is hilarious. He goes, "I think everyone who works down here is a Rick Astley fan to a certain extent." Okay, you got to admit that's funny. You
That's
have
good.
to admit that's funny.
That's good. That's good. That's well done. That's well
Mhm.
done. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We're never going to give you up. We're also not going to let you down. And so we'll see you next week. Thanks everybody for joining us. Mike, thanks for being there. Nice hat and amazing diplomas. You are a super important person. Goodbye,
Yeah.
everybody.
See you for SAT tomorrow.